John Walsh created his 20-metre-long mural, it was a period of intense creativity and Māori cultural renaissance in New Zealand. What memories, issues, controversies and supports creatives from this time have to work through? That's loosely the topic, but we will see where it goes. I'm now going to hand over to Ella to introduce everyone and to kick things off. So, thank you everyone.
E tua keo I ki te mihi atu ki a koutou kātua rauranga tira mā e hui mai nei tēnei wā mō tēnei kaupapa whakaira. Tēnā koutou kātua. Kia mātou ngā rangatira o te ao auaha, ngā mihi. Haere mai, nau mai. Kia ora tātaka. And still not working. Sounds like a metaphor for colonisation. That's just down the road in the next workshop. So I might just park that puppy up. Get that. And get that. It's a trick. Far be it from me to feel pleasure at seeing a woman on her knees. But if that works... Thank you so much. Anyway, I'm going to sit down now. I'm short. Nobody will notice the difference. I just want to say, he uri o muri whenua ahau. Ko Ngāti Kauki Whāngaroa Te Rāroa, me Ngāti Kuri o Ku Iwi. If you know any of those tribes, you are a long way from home. So on behalf of my ancestors, first and foremost, I should probably apologise to most of you because I come from that lot that probably came to town and wrought a bit of damage in your communities, in particular to the tangata whenua o tēnei roke, nō reira ngā mihi nui ki a rātou. Ngā mana whenua o tēnei whenua ata. I am from the north and I am more on that, so I'm just going to talk. I'm from the north and I have absolutely no idea how I got invited to come and talk about art from Tolaga Bay. Because, quite frankly, in 1,000 years, not one of my ancestors went south of Mangamuka for a missus. It is a miracle I have not got 3 eyes. I may still find the 3rd one. So, I am not actually of this extraordinary place. So it is a great privilege for me to be able to engage in conversation, first and foremost, with John as the creator of this amazing group of images and feelings, because that's what a painting is. It's a collection of brushstrokes that convey memory and thought and feeling. So I want to just take this opportunity first to thank Darcy and Witi and of course John for allowing me to be here, but also for participating in this conversation. Because that's what I want to see happening. It's a conversation. I've just spent a whole week at a conference in Auckland, at Auckland University, called the International Indigenous Research Conference, and quite frankly, after an hour of listening to an Indigenous person talking, I felt like stabbing myself in the eye with a pencil. So we're going to have none of that today, you understand? Today, we're going to engage in dialogue about really important discourse. So I thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to getting to know a little bit more of some of you, and more importantly, to find out about the period out of which this art came and created such an interesting moment in the history of New Zealand and Māori art. So what I'd like to do first and foremost is ask John if he would share some of his recollections of the time that this extraordinary piece of art came into being. And you can do that standing up, sitting down, with a mic, without a mic.
I'll try and do that. Kia ora koutou. I gave a little talk at the opening the other night, so I'll try and put it in a nutshell so we can carry on with our conversation. I had recently run away from art school back home to Uawa, my people, and because I didn't finish my degree, I taught myself to paint by doing mostly these portraits over there. And after a little while, I thought, I don't want to be doing this all my life. I want to expand my practice. So I approached my marae and talked about doing something big, so I could do something for the community and to start expanding my practice a bit more. And at the same time, all this was going on, contemporary Māori art movement was in full swing, big head of sail. And you can't hear me. I thought I was yelling. Okay?
Yay!
Sorry. So I'd rock up to these Ngāpuna Waihanga hui. A lot of these fellas would have gone there. This is where I first met my cousin. I remember that time when you were sitting quietly in the corner, very shy. I think it might have been at Ray Hammond's. We went to visit Ray Hammond's once. Anyway. I mean, we were caught up in the whole energy of that movement. It was fantastic. And one year I came home and that's when I approached my marae to do this. But my marae are very conservative in a little town on the East Coast. And to be fair, when I started it, I didn't know what it was going to be. But I just wanted to get involved and do this thing. And halfway through it, they decided it was too much. It was too... all sorts of things. I think it was mostly me. But anyway, I don't want to rabble on here all day. This is the beginning of our conversation, eh? How about Yala?
Yeah. So, because you brought Witi into the conversation, I'm really interested in your whakaata to follow on, actually, because this is very much about how the 80s transformed so much about our lives.
Well, kia ora, Ella. Kia ora koutou. Haramaine ki tēnei mahi o te rā. So, I'm here, John, with all of the whanaunga here in the front row. They are all descendants of the people in here. We know that that's Uncle Api. We know that's Auntie Polly. We know all of these people. And in fact, I was a bit disturbed about sitting here, Ella, because I thought you wouldn't be able to see me. You might think I was part of painting. So for us, this is a very, very special moment to honour you for the work that you did. Now, Ella, what's interesting is that at the time that he was doing this, it was the only one, Darcy, the only mural of its kind, and I still think it is the only mural of its kind in New Zealand's art history. The only mural. There were other murals that were done by Cliff Whiting, there were other murals done by you too, Darcy, but they were not showing portraits, actual portraits of people, including Pākehā, including people who were still alive, as well as our tūpuna. And that is the very revolutionary thing that you did, John, was that you decided to create a holistic view of Māori past, present and future. So for us, when we see these people, we start to cry and we start to laugh to see them. So in the future, I imagine that what people will do will actually go up to these and hongi them, just as we are doing with some of the historic artists who are now showing. The other thing about this painting, John, that was fascinating to me was that, apart from being a very, very individual creation and startling in terms of the history of New Zealand, in fact, it mirrors the kind of work that you sometimes saw in Chicago. You know, like community art where black guys and black women would be seen on these great big buildings around the ghettos of Chicago. It's also similar to the Russian, Soviet, Marxist panels that they would show. We're not brandishing sickles and we're not brandishing farm implements, but in many ways those farm implements and those sickles are in our brains, because the 1970s, as you well know, Ella, they call it the Cultural Renaissance, the years of the Cultural Renaissance. Forget Cultural Renaissance, that decade was a cultural revolution. And we must never forget that in that decade was the Land March, 1975, was the Bastion Point, 1977 to 78, 506 days over a 2-year period. That Eva Rickard was taking people onto Bradlin Golf Course. That we had as I was saying before, Ngā Tamatoa. We had also Polynesian Panthers. That was the time when, what was the group who did the haka against the engineers?
The haka party was Ngā
Tamatoa, but it was also Hetoa. And they did this haka against the engineering students. We must also remember that that was the period when Sid Mead was the first Māori professor of Māori studies, 1975. So Māori studies today stands on the shoulders of those people in the 1970s, because it really was a very, very significant time. We also saw the beginning of gang culture. Daniel Hopapa was murdered, and it was the first indication to New Zealanders that the world was changing. So at the time that we were all working, and we're still all subversives, you're still working hard. Ella has always been subversive, but look, she's a woman. Darcy has actually been very, very important to my life. He did all of the covers for a 5-volume anthology called Te Ao Marama, so I owe him for the vision that he brought, which was a similar vision to this. So in our day, what we were trying to do was to move the world a little. And now look where we are now. We've moved it a lot. It's moved into an extraordinary time, hasn't it, Ellen? Now we have 1/3 of the New Zealand Parliament of 120 people are now people of colour. In our day, it was only 4. You know, now it's 40. How amazing is that? There was no such thing as the Waitangi Tribunal. Never existed. By 2014, they had found and decided to act on 68 treaty settlements. In our time, our people were pohara. They never had this kind of mechanism to take them forward. So this is of that time before. This is of that time when we weren't as able to create the momentum for change. And that change only came out and about John, because of you, and because of Darcy, because of Ella, because of all of those people who were active in those days. And you mentioned Te Puna Waihanga. There was another organisation that began in those days. 1973 was the first meeting, and that meeting was at Te Kaha. The second one was at Ngā Te Kaha. So John, this is really interesting because, you know, I know that our people, our uncles and aunties, didn't want to have this at the marae, but I think that they had very, very good reason, and that was that they were applying tikanga. And the tikanga was that you never showed living people on the walls of the meeting house. I've never seen a photograph, for instance, of a living person on the meeting house. And of course, you were also being revolutionary and showing the Pākehā in Māori. So I can understand, we can understand why it was that they said to you no. Just as my father's people at Rongopai, they also said no in 1888, when the young artists of that time came to Rongopai and they built it. And in Rongopai, you will see renditions of my great-great-grandfather Witi. You'll see women dressed in bustles, you'll see a boxing match, you'll see a horse race. And so they closed the meeting house because they thought it was too revolutionary. And I met John also there because he was the one who painted all of the porch of the more recent tupuna. And so I honour you too from Taitanga Mahaki as well, John. So it's really important for us to be here today, all of us, to witness this extraordinary piece of work and its place in history. And I'm sorry I've taken so long, but if I don't do this now, I mightn't get the chance later. But as I say, for all of us, it's a living piece of art. It's a living portrait. And it makes us cry, it makes us weep, it makes us thrill that we have survived. Now, Darcy reckoned that one of the reasons why we were so active as revolutionaries in that time was because of the music that we were hearing. And I was thinking about this last night, and I thought, yeah, that must have been around about the time that Elvis was singing in the guitar. You know, and Martha Reeves and the Chantels were singing dee-da-da-da-da-dee-da-da, dancing in the street, you know. And she was trying to get everybody to realise that we got to get out there and dance. So this is an act of dancing.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to pass this on to Darcy because I think you've been brought into the conversation as well. But I just want to say a muralist, which I'm particularly moved by, is Diego Rivera, who was, of course, the revolutionary from Mexico for his people who had the girlfriend with the big eyebrows, but that's another story. But very much about capturing the struggle as well as the freedom aspirations, and I think that there's an element of that in there as well. And the other thing I want to add is actually we should be grateful to you old people, because if they had put that up on the wall nearly 40 years ago, it probably wouldn't be in such good state now. So maybe they were a lot smarter than we thought. Anyway, Darcy, how old Whakaata?
Greetings everyone. I'm going to stand up because I can't see you. I want to see who's out there in the audience. I created my first art when I was just a baby. I used to draw on my cot and had a whole lot of pictures there and pencil all over it. So I've been creating art for over 60 years. And art is a journey that takes you not only within yourself, but it's a journey of self-discovery. And you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about the world around you, and the only way you can really do something about art is to get out there and explore the world and see what's happening. And your art should reflect everything that's happening around you at the time. When I was a kid in the early 50s and the late 40s, a lot of the people around me were returned servicemen, and they had a dream of a new vision for Māoridom. And their vision was that we would get out there and we'd learn about the world and we'd get our land back. And that's a vision that we had to live as artists, because millions of acres of our land were stolen. My mother was brought up by her grandfather, who was brought up by his father and his father and his father. So we're going back nearly 300 years just to that short thing. My mother's grandfather had his land taken off him, so he decided that he would go out and plough his own land. And he was taken to prison without trial, locked up here initially in Mount Victoria, and then sent down to the caves down in Dunedin, where they spent 2 years before he came back, and all his life he spent trying to get the land back. So we were brought up in that whole thing of saying, how do we do this? So my parents, who were very fluent, and the elders around us, I remember my next door neighbour was a Pākehā guy, and I must have been about 4.5, 5, and he had his pitchfork, and he was in his 90s, and he was showing us how he fought the Maoris with his pitchfork. And it was a fascinating discussion. But we had all these artists older than me, and my generation. My close friend was Buckman. And we did our very best to say, how do we now put this images into imagery, into words, into song, into dance, so that people will understand it. And how do we take it out to the world? And that's what our intention was, is to take our art out into the world. I got involved in it about 1965 when I met a lot of the contemporary artists, like Fred Graham, Paramatta, Katharina Mataira, a whole lot of them then, and then eventually they formed the Maori Artists and Writers Society, they called it, because that was the way of getting it seen. Then it eventually changed to up in the Waihanga. Right through there, we decided that we had to learn our own culture in depth and understand the meaning of all the visual art that we had. And we had the elders around us who were prepared to teach us what these things actually meant, and how we then take that, how we appropriate all the knowledge of the world in terms of painting Matisse, Cézanne, Braque, Picasso, all of those artists, how the pointillist, how do we appropriate that and then we put it into our art form. And that's what we did as artists, and that was part of the revolution. Murals like this were being done to show pride, to show Maori pride, to show African American pride, to show Native American pride, to show African pride. And in 1984 I got a Fulbright to go over and have a close look at Native American and African American art and cultures and how they were working. And that journey led me to Australia to look at the Aborigines, then off to Africa to have a look at the Africans, and then to Japan to look at the Japanese and how they were doing it. And we decided, okay, we need to supplement this and drive it. And my job in Wellington here was to look at a lot of the politics of it. So in the 1980s, I was running the Wellington Arts Centre, and that was an innovative program that the Maldivian government, guided by Helene Wong, who was the wife of Colin Knox, who was the Deputy Town Clerk, they decided to develop this program for unemployed artists. And when I arrived, I had 150 artists and no Maori, so I decided I'm going to have a Maori performing arts group, a Maori dance group, Maori weavers, and then develop it that way. And they'll be part of a whole lot of other things. And as we developed that, the Labour Department decided they wanted to start something in Auckland, so we started the Auckland one, and then they wanted one in Christchurch. We started the Christchurch one, and you had a whole lot of these mini groups of contemporary Maori art developing all around the place. It's around about the 80s when I came across John, and John had told me the history of this portrait here, and I was a little bit horrified because, with apologies to you people, John, because we were already rocketing ahead. We were already embracing the world globally. We were already looking at the authenticity of the popo that used to go down into the ground, the very ground, and at the bottom of that popo were the bones of that ancestor. That's in ancient times, okay? What happened is the building regulations changed it all, and they lifted everything up off the floor. The materials changed, all the concepts changed, and Maoridom at that stage was well and truly Christianised. And a lot of the ancient beliefs that we had were pushed aside and ignored. So contemporary artists, I was the second, well, probably the youngest of them all, is Witi, Whakaata, Paramatta, Zenietze, Fred Graham, who's now 90. A whole lot of the artists, we sat down and we decided, let's have a close look at our culture. And then we sat down with the Tohungas at the time, and we questioned them and they questioned us, and it helped us to consolidate where we wanted to go in the future. And we wanted to see writers, filmmakers, actors, performers. The musicians had already beaten us to the draw because they were already performing internationally in the 50s. They were big hits. Kiri Tukamba has taken off overseas as a lead singer. Enya Tuiata, he did the same thing. The Maori High Fives, they were all rocking ahead. And they were a wonderful guide for us. Howard Morrison, and we supported them. But we had to make these adjustments. So when John came along and I saw this, I couldn't believe it. I could understand. It was such a big thing. And it wasn't really in line with what you would have in a wharetukuna. But it was certainly something that needed to be publicly displayed, particularly in a gallery. And I was just saying to John, this is the sort of artwork that Te Papa should really be buying. They're spending huge amounts of money on stuff that's done by artists from overseas, And they should be buying this sort of thing, recording it properly and having it available, and the stories told in the history of Māoridom told through this hard work. From there, John and I were talking. I'd actually been invited to do a mural over in New York, and I couldn't do it because I had a whole lot of stuff. I had a whole lot of other stuff I wanted to do, and John did it, and went over there and did a beautiful mural there in New York, John, didn't you? Is it still there?
No.
Oh, okay. Eventually everything changes, of course. You know, that's what happens in art. But just the work itself, the only other artists, Maori artists, technically I know who can paint, not quite as good as John, but she's pretty good, probably Sophia Vincent. I don't know if you know her work. Yeah, very, very, very good young woman artists coming through with the same skills. And John's probably technically the most skillful of all our contemporary Maori artists. And I've known them over the last 50 years. And a lot of, when I talk technically, I'm talking about painting. I'm talking about painting and I'm talking about carving and raranga and all the other things, but particularly when it comes to portrait painting, he leaves us all behind. I'm just working on a series of Maori woman paintings now called the Modigliani woman, which is a woman with long legs, of course, you know, and the Picasso woman. So we appropriate all of this sort of stuff, and then all my stuff goes overseas. But wonderful painting. It's the first time I've seen it. Great to see all these faces. It was at a time when we were coming together as Maori people and standing up with Maori pride. It was a time when African Americans were standing up talking about African American pride. It was a time when women were standing up and talking about women pride and stuff like this. There was a lot of conflict, a lot of debate, a lot of arguing, but we've since moved on. You know, people like Taika Waititi and a whole lot of others on the big international arena. We have a lot of singers on the international arena, and a lot of our artists ourselves, we exhibit all over the world. So that's the situation we're facing today, and this work here reflects a lot of the struggle that we had as artists and coming through and breaking all the boundaries that were around us.
Thank you, Darcy.